Okay, all I gotta do is put this thing back together. What this video is about basically is how to get the rear or the front axles replaced without disturbing your front end alignment. In other words, not removing these two bolts. All you're doing is taking the tie rod off, freeing it up. But we're not going to mess with those because that would change the front end alignment. And you can get the axle out and in without having to affect the alignment. So that's what this video is going to be about, with a few complications thrown in. Alright, first thing I got to do is get this cotter pin out. You take that nut off. It's 17 millimeter. This one has a washer on it. Usually they don't have washers. I usually take a heavy dolly piece of metal and I put it underneath that just to give it some support, and just tap it and it pops it free. We're going to leave it temporarily attached just for a minute while I get the tube underneath. There's two 14 millimeter bolts I'm going to take off. This is the ball joint. There's a 14 millimeter one on the other side. You got to get those off. That's what I'm working on right now. I got them partway loosened. I just left this on. I popped it loose, but I left it on there temporarily so I could get these off, because when you're loosening them, this will keep this hub from moving back and forth. Okay, I'm removing, there's three 10 millimeters on here. Take those off and get this shield off of here. That way I'll just have a little bit more room to see what I'm doing when I try to get the axle out. Gives me a clear shot of the axle. Yeah, I gotta pull the cotter pin and this lock thing here for that nut and take that nut off. I have a 30 millimeter socket with my electric torque. Get that nut off of there. I should be able to push that in, which it does, so that's free. I take a crowbar, it's kind of a thin one, and I wedge it in between the back under there where the control arm is. Wedge it in underneath here and set it on top of the stabilizer. That way I can push down on this thing and it frees, so that frees up. Now I should be able to push the axle out. So I'm going to go ahead and put my leg over this crowbar so I can hold it down, hook my leg over it, and see if I can get that axle out of there. There. So that way, if I do it that way, I don't have to disconnect the strut mount, which is your front end alignment. I don't have to mess with that. Now I can get underneath there and pop that axle out of the transmission. Okay, I got this long screwdriver, pretty stout one. You want to slip it right in there. I always pry out this way, so I'm using this as my resting surface. If you go the other direction, you're going to drive the screwdriver into the transmission, so make sure you're prying away from the transmission. And you just kind of give a quick little push and it pops it out of there. Kind of hard to do this with one hand. There. See the seal there. So anyway, got the axle out, removing the least amount of stuff possible. And when I pulled that out, I try not to drag it across the seal, so the seal's good. And what I recommend you do, especially if you put in a new seal, work some grease in the back side. around the backside. Stick your finger with some grease on it. Get around the backside of the seal. There's a spring goes around that seal on the backside that presses the lip of it down on the shaft, and sometimes you put it in there, pop that axle in, it'll pop that spring out, and you won't get a good seal, and you'll get some dripping coming out of here. So if you grease up the back side of that spring, it keeps that spring from popping out. At least that's my theory. I've had that happen to me several times. Really irritating. Before I started greasing them up. So anyway, that concludes getting all that. Now we can put the new axle in. Alright, this is a brand new axle. It's not a reman, it's a new one. There's that little cup on it. And when you, I kind of remember when you install this, there's this little C-clip here on the end. And when you install it, make sure the gap is down. For some reason they snap in better if the gap is on the bottom. Anyway, trying to figure out the difference between this one and a bad one. You know, I wiggle this. There's no looseness. It doesn't wiggle back and forth much. I mean, it's just a tiny little movement. At the other end, the one that goes out to the wheel hub, it's really tight. That's what a new one feels like. This one is pretty much like the other one. Got the same amount of tightness. At the end, it goes to the hub, is a lot freer. It feels good. There's probably nothing wrong with this axle. I'm going to replace it anyway. Okay, I'll try to get that axle in there. Try to be careful putting it in and getting started. Make sure you have the C-ring on the end, the gap on the bottom. Kind of work it in there without touching the seal if you can. Get started. Okay. I'll reposition the body here. Son of a bitch. Happens sometimes. Usually you just give them a good push and they go right in. This one's fighting me for some reason. Alright. Damn. I couldn't get this thing in the transmission. I took the little C-clip out, still couldn't get it in. I go in about 3/4 of the way and jam up. So I took this old differential and I cut the end off of it. Here's what I cut off. That gave me access to this spider gear here. But first, before I checked that, I slid this on, and it slid right on just fine. So when I tried sliding the spider gear on, it got stuck about that right there, and that's as far as it would go. So what I ended up doing is taking some valve lapping compound, smearing it on there on the spline, and then I hammered the spider gear on and off and on and off, and I rotated it, hammered it on and off, kept rotating all the way around, hammering it on and off until it went on and off no matter where it was rotated. And I was hoping it wouldn't take any metal off of this, it would only take it off the spline on the shaft, and it evidently did that, because now I can stick that thing right in there and pull it right out without too much trouble anyway. So I'll put the C-clip back on and install it in the transmission. Pissed me off that that thing wouldn't fit. Brand new. It's not a reman, it's a brand new shaft. Omni 5, which I assume is made in Mexico from all the Spanish written on. Okay, went right in that time. Cleaning that damn spline up. I can work this into the end of this. Gotta get the crowbar under there. Put my leg over it, push it down. Okay, it went in. Alright. Get that ball joint lined up on there. Alright, now I can put it back together.